That's right.
You're
Okay.
from it.
Yeah. Where's Pete, do you know?
Get my coffee out. You look very apprehensive.
It's okay. It's just still long before. Actually, I have work still on the coffee.
Ready to go? Mark, ready to go? Good evening again, and welcome to the Tuesday, March 20th, Wasatch Grove Town Council Workshop. We have the roll call, please.
Yes, Councilman Goldeneye,
Here.
Councilman Gerald,
Here.
Vice Mayor Liang,
Here.
Councilman Rocket,
Here.
Mayor Brown.
Here. If you could stand for the pledge, remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to have this workshop. Give us stability, clarity, and a good meeting. We pray in your name. Amen. All right, Mark.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. We have met with both parties. This has been in the planning for some time. And the agreement was that what we would do is we would have Wasatch Grove Commons come up and give you an update of where they are with their project. And then after they're complete, Palm Beach College will come up and also do theirs. And I think at that point, we can just kind of roll with it and see how the rest of the meeting goes.
Okay.
So with that,
All right.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Bob Pence. I'm with Land Design South, and I'm here this evening representing the Wasatch Groves Common project. And I'm also going to give you an overview of the project, as I'm sure all of you are well aware, and you've seen way too much of me over the years. We've been involved in the Simon property for many, many years. We assisted the comprehensive plan amendment coming through the process over a 2-year period, and as you were aware, we approved it last summer. Give you a quick overview. I am going to be referring to the PowerPoint quite a bit, so that's going to really be the, oh, there we go. I look better in the dark anyway. So there, just give you a little bit of an overview about what we're going to be requesting from the council tonight. Again, first off, we appreciate the opportunity to have a workshop. There's really 3 parts of the presentation that you're going to be seeing this evening. I'm going to work on the first 2 sections of that, and then I'm going to turn it over to the college, and they're going to, I think, address really what's specific to the Palm Beach State College request that you have before you. First off, there are 4 items that have been submitted to the town for review. Kind of a summary of basically what they all are, and I'm going to be discussing them in the first 3, as it relates to Wasatch Groves Commons, as well as the overall comprehensive plan amendment. And the 4th one, of course, is going to be discussed, as well as part of the 3rd one by the college. First thing we're going to be talking about tonight is the comprehensive plan amendment and the multiple land use. As you know, we spent 1.5 to 2 years getting the MLU approved on the property, and of course now we're going to change it. And that's really what the first item is relevant to. The second one is more specific to what our actual request is going to be related to the comprehensive plan changes. We also have simultaneously with the comprehensive plan amendment application a rezoning and site plan approval for the commercial property. I believe the college also is going to be moving forward with some of their master plan for their portion of the site. And again, finally, we'll have a discussion by the college about some special policies for the zoning code comprehensive plan for the town of Wasatch Groves that are specific to the college. And again, they can talk about that to you this evening. Again, broken it down into 3 different parts. Again, I will be discussing the first 2 of these items, the Wasatch Groves Common, which is the commercial property. Also the status of B Road. As I think you already discussed tonight, The roads in Loxahatchee Groves are very important to the community, very important to the council. We are going to be talking about B Road because I'm sure you're going to want to know what's happening with the status of that road, and we're going to give you an update on where we are and where we think we're going to go, and make sure that that coincides with your plans for B Road in the future. Then, of course, again, the college is going to be talking about their property. As a quick overview, let's talk about what we have today on the site. The property is approved today as a MLU, or a multiple land use. The multiple land use, there are only 2 of them in the town. The Simon property is one. The second one is the property, of course, immediately to the east of the site. Again, they were originally approved by the town in July of last year, about 7-8 months ago. The MLU has 3 different components to it. The first of which, and the largest one, is the R5 component, which again I think most of you are familiar with. This is where we had the 19 residential single-family homes located within that portion of the property. Again, that's roughly 55 acres of the overall parcel. The second component is the commercial retail component of the site, and that is the property located at the northwest corner of B Road and Southern Boulevard. It's roughly 21.7 acres in size. Originally approved for 91,000 square feet, and that is probably where the majority of the changes are not going to be occurring. That area, for the most part, is going to remain as it is today with some very minor tweaks to it. And the third parcel, which is probably going to undergo the majority of the comp plan changes, is the CLO portion of the site. CLO stands for Commercial Low Office. It was approved for 130,000 square feet. That would be part of the property that the college purchases and will be converted back to residential. As an overview, again, this is what we are looking to, what we are proposing with the town of Loxahatchee Groves. Again, the first component, largest component, is the college. That is the R5, which is going to be roughly 75 acres in size. It is the area in green. It incorporates the 2 different land uses that I mentioned to you just a moment ago. It's also important to point out that the MLU is going away. After we spend a significant amount of time working on the MLU, there will not be an MLU on this property anymore. It will have 2 distinct land uses, and these are what those land uses will be. Again, the R5 for the college and the commercial low for the corner retail portion of the property. It's also relevant to note that the commercial low is increasing slightly from 91,000 to 94,000 square feet. The reason for that is that in the town of Loxahatchee Groves, you have a defined maximum building coverage of 10%, and basically that equates to the 10% building coverage in the town, which by the way is a very, very low building coverage, and you'll see that probably on the plans here in just a moment. Give you a quick overview. If you want to look at the actual numbers, what was approved and what's being changed. The office was 130,000 square feet. It's going to 0. It's going away entirely. The commercial retail component from 91 up to 94,000 square feet. Again, that's a 10% building coverage for that particular parcel, consistent with your comp plan. The third item, or total rather, is 221,000 square feet compared to the 94,000 square feet, which is a reduction of 126,000 square feet of commercial on the site. Of course, however, we are adding the college in there too, so the college can specifically talk more about their request. And in addition to that, of course, 19 residential units are also going away. So that's kind of an overview of what we had and what we are proposing as part of this new revised comp plan amendment that's coming through the process and that you will be seeing here in the upcoming months. The next thing I want to talk about, which again is kind of a global view of the site, is access in and out of the property. As part of our submittal documents to the town, we have submitted a letter from the Florida Department of Transportation, District 4. We did go to them. We did propose various access points into the property. It's really pointless to come to you and say, hey, this is where we want to have access points if DOT does not approve them. So it's important that we get their approval, which we have done. What they have approved is as follows. There are 3 access points directly off of Southern Boulevard that DOT has approved into the property. The first one, as I showed here, is roughly in the center of the commercial element. It's a right in and right out only, and it's pretty much located in the center of that commercial parcel. The second one is a common entry drive that will serve both the college and is located on the college property, as well as the commercial element also. It also is a right in and right out into the property off of Southern Boulevard. That component that I just showed you a moment ago are on the screen now. Will serve again both the college as well as the retail element, and I'll show you that here in just a few moments. And the third and final one is just a write-in only, and that's directly into the college property itself. And again, this is a copy of a letter from FDOT. It was submitted as part of the information package to your staff for your review. And again, does approve those 3 access points into the property. It is important to point out and relevant that at the traffic light at B Road and Southern Boulevard is where all your left turning movements will occur. You'll note that there is no other way to turn out of the site to go eastbound or to enter the property from the west. So you have to make those turning movements at B Road into the site unless you make a turn to the property or you turn along Southern Boulevard. Another key element that's been discussed through the process has been Tangerine Drive. Tangerine Drive, of course, is sort of a frontage road that runs in parallel with Southern Boulevard and has kind of been talked about as being sort of the main street for the Loxahatchee Groves and being a connector that runs from this property to the east. The proposal is to terminate it at the western edge of the commercial property at that access drive, and I'll show you more about that in just a moment. But that is intended to be, again, sort of a frontage road, main street, and we are treating it as such on our particular site plan, and you'll see that in just a moment. There are 2 access points off of B Road, one in again into the commercial, and there is a second one into the college, and I think we'll talk more about that as we go through the project. Next, I'd like to focus primarily on the Loxahatchee Groves Commons. I think this is really the first time you've actually seen the detailed site plan, architectural drawings for this project. We do have the architect here with us tonight. In fact, I think we have way more consultants in the audience than we do members of the community. So we have to get a bigger room. But that being said, I'm going to focus again on Loxahatchee Groves, which is the commercial component. It is a 21-acre parcel, of course, at the northwest corner. This is the area. I'm going to blow that area up in yellow. This is the plan. And again, I want to just reiterate the access points into the property and show you how the site plan ties into those access points on the overall parcel. Again, we have the one access point from B Road entering the property, which is where Tangerine Drive is intended to connect into this property. Again, it does extend through the Solar Sports Systems property onto to the east, and is intended to be built by the various properties, and again, is intended to be that frontage road. We also have, as I indicated a moment ago to you, is the main right-in, right-out into the property that DOT has approved, and again, the other right-in, right-out, which is a shared access point. This is kind of how that is going to be laid out. It is going to be an entry drive constructed by the college, and again, it will be a shared access drive that will provide access both again into the college as well as into the center off of Southern Boulevard. Between that, the access road on B Road and the secondary access point next to the college is where Tangerine Drive will fall. It will be, again, a connector road that will connect those 2 areas, and it is the intent that it will be terminated right here at the entry drive. It will not extend any further to the west into the college property. Next, I'm going to add on top of this our site plan. Probably the first thing you're going to see is that our main access drive running through our site plan is also Tangerine Drive. Again, it has been what has been expressed to us through the process over the last several years. Again, as Tangerine is your main street, you do want to have retail shops located adjacent to it and along that site, and that has really kind of become the main focal point of our overall site plan. We have we estimate about 20 different tenants in the overall site. Of those 20 tenants, I'm going to say that probably at least 15 or 16 of them will be fronting directly along Tangerine. The most relevant point are these 2 retail buildings. They're approximately 20,000 square feet, located right here and adjacent to it. And again, those 2 buildings will front along Tangerine. There's also a second building located here, which will also have the side of that building along Tangerine also. Into the site, we have 2 main corridors for access. I just dropped the first one in there, kind of that purplish pink color. And the second one, again, is Tangerine Drive. And the 2 of these roads are going to intersect kind of in the middle of the site. And at this site, that's kind of sort of the key turning point of the overall property. The north-south running entry drive is designed to be in a lane of trees as you enter the property that does drive through the parking area. The Tangerine Drive has very limited access to the parking. It's really designed to be more of a road. Along both of these roads, we are intending to have a variety of pavement treatments, such as brick pavers, concrete pavers, for example, again, to help slow traffic down and make that kind of more of that downtown look along that key corridor road. And again, this here is intended to be the center of it. There are a variety of open space areas throughout our site. This lake that you see is actually quite large. That is about a 6.5 acre lake on the property. So that is about 30% of the entire property is just that lake. So it is a significant water feature on the property. I'm sure you also note that it is along B Road. You will see it, and you'll also kind of come between that lake and another element park area that I'll talk about here in just a moment as you enter the property. So we think it'll be a very attractive entranceway into this commercial retail component. One of our key elements that we have strived for, and hopefully we've accomplished that with this site plan and with these architectural drawings, is trying to capture a character of Loxahatchee Grove and make it a Loxahatchee Groves community center as a retail center. And then we call it Loxahatchee Groves Commons, and really it is intended to be a gathering place from a variety of reasons and ways. If you look again at the center of the site, you have the two buildings. In between the two buildings is kind of a main plaza area, which is intended to be an outdoor dining, kind of a gathering area. Again, I'll show it to you, it's right here in the center of the property. Just to the north of that, across this little access aisle, is another passive pedestrian area, which is intended to be a place where you can sit adjacent to the lake area. And again, a place where you can have your cappuccino or whatever. You can ride your horse into the site and sit down and have a cup of coffee. It's also intended to be a place where maybe students from Palm Beach State College could actually gather for dining and all too. So that's one of the key outdoor dining areas of the site. In addition to that, nothing would be complete in Loxahatchee Groves without an equestrian trail system. It is our intent to put a trail system around that lake. We hope to be able to connect it up along B Road into the collecting canal system. So people will be actually able to ride their horses to the site. It's our hope that we'll have a little area over here when you first enter the property. It should be a place to tie up a horse. It's assuming you want to ride your horse through. Whether that happens or not, we want to provide that opportunity. So we want to provide that opportunity, and it's also our intent to separate it from the cars and parking. One thing that horses, that we all know, don't do well with, and that's asphalt pavement and parking in cars. So that's why we located it along the northern boundary of the property where the majority of our open space, green space is located. Another key factor of our site plan, I think that's a little unique, that you're not going to typically find, is the area in yellow. I'm going to blow that area up. This is intended to be a park area. Again, this is your main access drive coming in. This is Tangerine Drive right here. This would be the lake on the right or the north side of the entrance drive. On the south side, we have about a half acre of land we've set aside as kind of a community plaza park area. It's an open space community area. What will it be utilized for? That's really kind of up to the community and the center itself. I think our goal here is to, if you had an art festival, if you had a green market, if you had a small musical event or concert, it's a place which could occur on the property, right as you enter the site, could accommodate those type of uses. And it's a reasonably large area. It's about a half acre in size again. So we think that's kind of a unique feature to the site overall. And again, we're showing a little sketch here now. I don't think it's going to look quite like that with those trees on the property. But again, the intent is to have it as a small park area with a major or some sort of architectural feature on the side, either a gazebo or some other like a band shell or something where we could have certain special events on that property. And again, we think that is in keeping with the whole concept. I mean, Loxahatchee Groves is an outdoor community area, community space, and that's why we have a lot of these outdoor community areas on our site plan. We went back, we looked at what we talked about a year and a half ago as it relates to the design of the center. One of the key points that was brought out is that you wanted to have a minimum 40% pervious area on the property. I think I mentioned to you that the lake alone is 30% of the overall property. But the overall site exceeds 50%. We're actually right around 53% of pervious area on the site, so I think we've accomplished that goal. Actually, we exceeded that goal, so hopefully this kind of helps to show our desires to comply and conform with the community as a whole. The next thing I want to talk about is architecture of the overall center, because I think the architecture, frankly, is more important than the site plan. The architecture is what everybody's going to see. Nobody, once you're flying over it in a helicopter, you're not going to get a good concept of the site plan, but the architecture certainly is going to, I think, continue that character of Loxahatchee Groves for the site. And what we have looked at, of course, is the Rural Vista Committee's Loxahatchee Groves guidelines that you created. And there's a variety of elements in there. I mean, Not that we're going to look like this, but certainly we took a look at a lot of the elements that we have in Loxahatchee Groves. And I think one thing you'll find here in just a moment, and you have a variety of architectural styles. I mean, I think I'd call this a little more Art Deco than anything else. But in any case, we are focusing primarily on the rural character. And I think this is kind of an interesting picture. If you look at this photograph for 1 second, and you look at the elements of it, if you look at the porch on it, you look at the wood siding, you look at the metal roof, you look at all of the various parts of it, and if you look at the next picture, which is a bank building up in Jupiter Farms, I mean, there's a lot of similarities to it. I mean, look at the porches, look at how the roof has been designed, look at the siding on it. Again, they do have a lot of similar elements, so I think there is the ability of capturing some of that rural character in our overall project. We have looked at all of the various elements that you have within the town available to us, and I think after we do that, we find some key factors architecturally that you would like to see. We made a list of a few of them. One of them, the first one we see is wood siding. We're not saying the building's going to be wood, but it's going to look like wood. I think that's part of the intent of having that horizontal siding, cut-core siding on these buildings. Metal roofs, if you look at the majority of the buildings that you have that have this rural character of this Florida vernacular, I think a lot of metal roofs certainly is part of that character and that theme. Porches are an absolute must. I think if you look at any of the, that makes some rocking chairs to go along with it, I think would be critical to the overall project. Cupolas, dormers, other elements, weather vanes on top of the roof, these are all, I think, architectural features and elements that we think can blend in well and can become part of our vernacular for our overall project that we're going to create. Window treatments are focused quite a bit in your study. They can be anything from shutters to window panes to any kind of special treatment, but certainly windows are an important element also in your design. That basically all brings you to this Florida vernacular or rural theme. Again, rural is repeated numerous times throughout your book, and I think it's kind of the main character theme that you're looking to advocate. If you look at the site plan for one moment, I'm going to show you a couple sketches. The first one is looking down the Main Street area. This is kind of an architectural sketch. It kind of gives you an overview. You see really primarily the Main Street, but you also see over there to the right-hand side, which is the north side of that street, really what the intended architectural style is to look like. And I have a few little items here to maybe to point out to you again. The concept of cupolas along the roof. We also have some dormers along the elevation of all of the buildings within the side, in addition to the cupolas. In addition, the siding that we talked about, having that horizontal wood look to it, again carrying that Florida vernacular rural theme. Again, the metal roof, and I think also the metal roof is a very important element. What's hard to see in here, and I thought I had a name for it, is the actual porches themselves. We actually have there is a continuous arcade running along the entire set of these retail buildings along the north side, which again carry that whole theme of that porch look along all of these major buildings. So all of the buildings have porches, and all of the buildings are intended to have a similar architectural theme associated with them. This is an elevation actually prepared by the architect, again looking straight on to the building. Not quite as sexy, but it kind of gives you again an overall character of what we're looking at. This is a building arcade along the front of the building. Again, your metal roofs, cupolas, your dormers, your various siding elements, etc. This is also intended to be, this is actually the plaza area that's right in here between the two retail buildings. Again, the majority of your tenants are actually in these two buildings. You have probably 14, 15 tenants that will be located in those two buildings themselves. And again, that central area is intended to be an outdoor dining, gathering space within the overall site. The next building, which is the largest building on the site, is intended to be a grocery store. It's a building over at the western edge of the site. This is an elevation of that building. It shows you through the trees. Again, you're capturing some of those same elements. Again, you have the arcade, you've got the various dormers, various wood siding, other respective elements of stone in that building. Again, to continue that theme, as well as the metal roofs and the master roofs along the side of that building itself. So that kind of gives you an overall character of what we're looking to accomplish. And again, this is sort of comparing it to some other factors or other elements of other buildings that you have out in the west, as well as up in Jupiter on other architectural buildings. Here's the John Deere dealership. Again, you see the same basic elements. You see the porch, you see the metal roof, you see the wood siding. You see some of those same elements. Again, this is another building that's actually located in Wellington. Again, in the equestrian area that also carries that same theme along with it, which is kind of our intent. And again, this is a bank building at Jupiter Farms. So that kind of gives you an overview of the architectural theme that we're looking for the site. There's one other technical issue that I'm going to bring up, and this is about parking spaces. The town of Lox Etchee Groves may not be the biggest city in the state of Florida, but it has the largest parking spaces in the state of Florida. To give you an example, and the college may have the same concern, I'm sure they probably do. The parking spaces in unincorporated Palm Beach County, which I know that you don't want to compare yourselves with the unincorporated area, but just as an example, those spaces are 9.5 feet wide, 18.5 feet deep. Your spaces are 2 feet wider and 4 feet deeper. So they're much, much larger parking spaces. In addition to that, the access aisles between the spaces are 2 to 3 feet wider. So everything about it is much, much larger. If you were, for example, to reduce these spaces to 10 by 20, which is still a very large parking space, you would reduce the overall pavement area on the side. If I can get my little thing to turn, there we go. From 6.5 acres to 4.75 acres. So you would, that minor little change there, still a very large parking space, would be about 35% less per paved area on the site. And I will tell you that the site plan that we have prepared and submitted is the 10 by 20 foot parking spaces. And we are sensitive to your concern about larger trucks, larger vehicles. One thing we've talked about is the possibility of having designated spaces. You know, you have them for handicap, you have them for people, for moms that have babies. There's no reason why you couldn't have them for larger vehicles too. So certainly that would be an option where you can provide those number of parking spaces. But we do think that in this era of sustainability, it's kind of silly maybe to provide, you know, that much more asphalt on the property, and when that could be utilized as other areas on the overall site itself. So that's something that you'll see coming through the process, which is part of our application that we have. And there we go. Last thing I want to talk about, which is away from Lox Etchee Groves, is B Road. This is a section of B Road. Just to give you a quick overview, I'll run through it quickly. Okeechobee Boulevard at the north, of course, Southern Boulevard at the south end. That, of course, is B Road with the Clipping Canal just above the Simon and Solar Sports Systems property. Here are the two projects that you approved last year, as you probably recall. We committed the two properties jointly to either OGM or pave the partly OGM and partly paving of B Road from Okeechobee Boulevard down to Southern Boulevard. And we've had several meetings with Clede and Mark, as well as our host of our consultant team, talk about this. And just to give you a quick overview, what's been discussed is paving the section of road from Collecting Canal down to Southern Boulevard. That would actually be asphalt pavement. From Collecting Canal to the north would be your OGM treatment. In addition to that, something you discussed tonight is some sort of traffic calming device along that section of roadway. And a little mouse is not moving too well here. We're showing 3. We don't know the exact number or their exact location, but I think the intent here is to have some speed tables along that section of roadway there. Something that we would need to work with Clede, or engineering department consultants, and again with the overall town as a whole. When would this be built? Because I know you're going to ask us that question, and I'd be disappointed if you didn't. Is that it is intended to be built upon the project's permitting. So the first thing that happens when these projects get permitted and are ready to move forward is that road work will occur. And again, I think it remains the intent, as I understand it, that both Simon and Solar Sports Systems together will pay for the construction of that roadway. Something that this, by the way, is a little more detail of the actual asphalt pavement. From Collecting Canal to the north, again, is the OGM. The asphalt is occurring from the Collecting Canal to the south. It is 2 primary lanes of pavement with a 3rd lane in the middle there, which should primarily serve as the turn lanes, both into the various properties as well as left turn out onto Southern Boulevard. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the very simplistic view of it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I know the next part of the presentation, I will turn it over to the college. I don't know if you want to talk about this or if you want to go ahead and hear it.
Okay. Council members.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure, it's on.
In the current
You know what, I didn't see it before.
situation where you have the MLU,
Yeah.
the lake that you have there could be situated elsewhere, is that correct?
It could be, right, could be anywhere.
In what you're going to ask us to do, you're going to tell me that the lake needs to be on that property because that's your section of property, is that correct?
Very good question, Steve. We've had a number of discussions relevant to this issue with the college. We don't really care where the retention pond goes. We're happy to relocate that retention pond to another location within the overall property. I don't want to speak for the college. I get in trouble whenever I do that. But it's my understanding that the college does not want to or cannot share that retention responsibility with us. They would like both property owners to have their own distinct retention areas. Of course, here comes Mr. Seymour, who I'm sure would like to answer that question. But from our perspective, we're flexible. We're happy to have it as one combined retention area or each have their own. We show it on our property as our own retention area, primarily because of the college's request.
The reason that I bring this up is that I want to illustrate that if we were trying to operate under the MLU situation rather than changing the land use, there is an ability to accommodate the buffer that everyone's aware of that I find important, and perhaps use the necessary drainage areas as part of that buffer. But inherent in the plan that they're asking us to do, it creates a problem from doing that and basically puts this lake, which is acting as a buffer, in a place where it doesn't actually buffer from the surrounding neighborhoods. And I would just suggest that that's one of the reasons why changing the land use may be inappropriate. And further, I would like an explanation as to why we couldn't just change the land use in the college portion to institutional, since institutional is something that's in the MOU across the road. I'm wondering why we want to go back to the AR5, because certainly from my review of these matrices, it just doesn't fit there. So if somebody could explain to me why the decision-making process is the way it is it because of the two different owners, or what is the reason for that?
I'm going to answer the first part of that question again, and maybe clarify something. As far as having a retention pond that's common to both property owners, that could be done in the MLU or it could be done outside of the MLU. It could be done as we are proposing it to today. I think the bigger issue has been a concern by the college of sharing facilities with us, retention areas. We have no problem in having it combined, even under our proposed land use plan change. It could still be one retention area. It doesn't have to be divided into two, other than the fact that I think the college has some governmental reason why it needs to be separated, which I think they need to answer rather than myself. Relevant to the institutional use, I'm not sure if that's something you want to answer now, or would you rather address that to your presentation?
Good evening. My name is Brian Seymour with Gunstrom, we're the attorneys for the college. The short version on the lake issue is that we're not talking about two developers here. It's the thing we have to remember. You've got one developer who's developing a commercial pod, and then you've got an institution that holds the public trust that is not looking to make money, is not looking to get into situations. When you have these kinds of shared facilities, there is liabilities, there's a lot of other issues that arise from a legal perspective that the college can't really put itself in that position to do as though a private entity might be able to do. Even a private school might have that opportunity. The college has to look out in both the short and long term for the public trust, the public money. The board is very concerned about that. So it doesn't, there are certain things we are doing, providing easements for drainage and that access road where we're providing an easement for the access road so that you can work those where possible, but the shared drainage is something that could create long-term problems for the college. So it's really not legally feasible for them to try to put that together. It's not just we don't want to. There are real issues associated with that, again, because we're not a developer. The issue of the MLU is probably better answered actually by Mr. Fleischman, who's much more intimately familiar with the MLU and how it's put together and what it means. The reason we're going back to RR5 on the college is because it has what we need. It contemplates educational uses, and they're not specifically college, which Ms. Walters is going to talk about how we deal with that. It does contemplate the educational use. It was what was already there when y'all looked at this in the first instance, And we thought that would be the simplest and easiest way to get back in that service.
I would just like to point out that there's approximately 6 acres of lake that, when we were talking about a 15-acre buffer, we were told that that land was not something that could be given up by the college. And I'm just trying to illustrate that I feel that this particular arrangement, being what it is not trying to work with us at all to solve that problem. I think it would just be one of several examples tonight, but I guess that would be number one.
Okay. Anybody else, any other councilman regarding what Bob has shared?
I had a question in regards to the ingress egress on Southern. Is there going to be any ingress for eastbound traffic on Southern onto the property?
No.
Other than B Road?
No, other than B Road, correct.
Okay.
We did request from FDOT a left into the property at the, what I call the center of those 3 access points on Southern Boulevard, and DOT did not approve that. It is our hope that once we construct this, we go back to DOT and they will allow us to left turn in. We're taking what we have right now and we'll take a look at it down the road, so.
Okay.
One more question about B Road. When B Road interfaces with Collecting Canal, I've heard some discussion that there is need to obviously widen the road, widen the culverts or whatever needs to be done there. Will those expenses also be borne by you?
Yes, we actually are doing the culvert crossings and the expansion of the culvert areas. Additional right-of-way has to be dedicated. All that is part of that B Road program. It's about cost-wise, I think the estimate is about a $1.1 million project. That's where we are today, just to give you an idea of the pavement part as well as the OW part of the road
And
the culverts.
one more question. Will you be looking for any private-public partnership, let's say, at all? You're going to handle the financing and
Right.
everything completely within your organization?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other councilman? Ross?
Well, my question is, we need the money now to do B Road. How can we go about getting the escrow account? No, we talked about connecting canal to Southern Boulevard and to reduce the speed and stuff like that, roundabouts and whatever. Okay, we've got a problem already on B Road. Okay, the more roads we pave in Loxahatchee, it's gonna be blasted by more traffic on B Road. Okay, I wanna solve the problems of the residents right now before the college ever breaks ground. So how can we get the money? Whenever you get an estimated cost or whatever, I'm more concerned about going from Okeechobee to Collecting Canal than I am from Collecting Canal to Southern. So now, explain to me how we can get that moving.
Well, if we approve the projects tonight, I can guarantee you. That's probably, it's funny, it's probably the best answer. The college has to, of course, acquire their property as does the commercial property. And I will guarantee you, though, that road improvement will occur prior to these projects being developed. And that's the first thing that's going to happen is that road will get built and improved. You're not going to see a college on that property without having B Road built. It's my guess that we're looking at the end of this year we should have all of our hopeful final approval sometime either tonight or sometime this summer. And once that occurs and these projects go forward towards the development and they get the construction drawings built, I think that funding should occur sometime at the end of this year.
All right, I did figure that.
Okay, any other councilman?
Yeah, I would, before Jim goes, I'd just like to say, otherwise, I do compliment you on following the Rural Vista guidelines and the other town requirements, with the exception of your parking spaces. But,
At least we're upfront with it.
yeah, no, but otherwise, yeah, I think we did a good job, at least, in giving back what we've said we'd like to see.
Well, we listened to the council and the community for several years, and I think we've paid attention to what you said, trying to design a project that will, again, capture the character of Loxahatchee Groves, create that sense of place that you're looking for in your community, and you'll know that you're in Loxahatchee Groves, not in Wellington or Royal Palm Beach or somewhere else. That's our intent. That's what we're trying to accomplish. So.
I got another question.
Let's give Jim a chance.
I had a question. Can you give us, you mentioned a grocery on the western edge of the property. I don't recall the square footage you had suggested. probably said it, but I missed it.
No, I didn't, I probably
Can you
didn't.
have an image, can you give us an example of around our area, what you would expect it would be similar to, maybe picking a public site, or,
It's shown as about a 45,000 square foot building on the property, which is a little under half of the square footage on the whole property. It is, if you were to look at an average Publix being built today, that's roughly the size that it is. It's not a big one, it's not a little baby one, it's a mid-sized one. That would be a comparable size to that, but it's Publix, that's the intent. So,
is a middle-sized one something you're familiar with in our immediate area?
well, the most recent one that was built, that we were involved in, which is not in your immediate area, is at the corner of in Palm Beach Gardens, the Hood, and alternate M1A. That is called Frenchman's Crossing. It's a brand new one, opened about a year ago, and that would be that size store. In fact, Mark actually designed that store. So, is there any other ones, Mark, that you know that are immediately around?
Are still in the South Shore, should not say that.
South Shore and Forest Hill. So, this is a little unique in that it's turned sideways, it's a standalone building for the most part, so that's intent. And it is an anchor store. I mean, when you have a center like this, you need an anchor. You need to make sure that it's successful. One of the key factors to the community as well as the developers is to make sure that it's a successful center. You need an anchor tenant, and that's the intent that we have. And again, the intent and the goal is to create and capture, like I said a moment ago, the character of Lock City Groves, make it a Lock City Groves center. That's why we've worked very diligently on what we call this little main street that we have. We're not City Place. City Place is, 10 times bigger than this, but we have what we have, and again, we think that this will be a very attractive center. We designed it around people and a little bit around horses. We tried to create a lot of open space areas within the overall site to, again, capture the whole concept. Very low building coverage. I will also point out that your average commercial center is somewhere in 20-25% building coverage. This is 10% building coverage, so that's why you have a lot of open space there on this side.
Last question, equestrian area around the proposed water area, the access to that was going to be off?
Right here, do you see, this is our park area right here. This is B Road is over here. So the intent, we hope there'll be an equestrian trail that comes down B Road, and we have a little equestrian trail that wraps around our retention area. And this is the area when you first enter the site where we would expect to put a little
Okay, so the
place
access
to buy a
is
horse,
off
for
of the
example.
road.
It's off of B Road, yes. I know the college is concerned about horses walking through their campus. I do know that, so for probably obvious reasons, so.
Okay, Rob. Bob, beautiful equestrian trail around the lake. I personally would like to see, we're putting in for a grant for what we call a multi-purpose trail, okay? I'd like to see it built so that it could handle equestrians, hikers, and bicyclists. So keep that in mind. I think that's what the residents would like to see in Lox Hatch. In other words, a multi-purpose trail where everybody can share.
All right. And then the council members, I've got Marty Perry.
While you're there, if I can get you to B Road with the change around. Good evening, Marty Perry, representing Solar Sports, which is the 90 acres east of B Road. Before starting, we were invited to a meeting yesterday with Mr. Fleischman and the town manager and Mr. Leilani, and the college's engineer, for a great discussion. We were given the proposed schedule. We were asked if we would cooperate. We were asked about our participation in B Road. We indicated that we would do everything we could to cooperate with the timeline that's hoping to be obtained, and taking Mr. Bence's comments and from his lips to yours and God's ears. Hopefully everybody can get permitted by the end of the year. I only have one concern, which I raised yesterday, and that is that Tangerine has been significantly relocated from the planning that we mutually went through during the comprehensive planning stage. If you look from the aerial there, our property extends to the first property to the north there, where you can see the white structure. Tangerine, as it came onto our property, came right along that northern property line. What effectively this does is redesigns our site. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure how that's going to impact us. It's going to take a lot of thought on our part to see what we can do with that and whether we can accommodate that or not. But that is a significant change from what we did over a period of about a year and a half relative to the location of Tangerine, which was at the time, notwithstanding what you're doing here in cutting costs as a result of college. We have no objection to any of the proposals. It's just fitting this in a complementary manner, and it has a significant impact on us. And that's the only point that I want to bring out in this work session.
Thank you. Okay, I've got Marge Herzog, and then Ian Parker.
Marge Herzog, A Road. The alignment of Tangerine shouldn't be a problem in the state of Florida because you wind up driving from one road into another road and then the other alignment is south of it or north of it. So that shouldn't be any problem. Just leave your Tangerine where it is and leave theirs where they want it. So that's just an input there. As far as B Road, B Road itself and the exit points, I would like to recommend that they do a right turn only out of any of those exits coming onto B Road to minimize the northern traffic. And coming out of Solar Sports, left turn only. Minimize that traffic going through our town. You know, we can't stop them from coming in the morning or whenever their first class is, but we can certainly limit how they're going to get back home. The other concern is on Tangerine that goes through the property there. You have an exit that is going to be backed up because people are going to be heading to B Road to make that left turn. That's the only place you can make your left turn. So you're going to have stop and go traffic from the college across Tangerine waiting to get out on B, go left on Southern Boulevard. I didn't hear anything about the roundabouts that had been talked about earlier on B Road. Are there going to be roundabouts at those intersection points, or what is it? If we want right turn only or left turn only, we don't want roundabouts too, because then it defeats the purpose of the right or left turn. Thank you.
Yeah, Rob.
Ann Parker, 15565, 219 Canal Road. You know, it looks real good, done a great presentation, but I can't see how you can justify putting another Publix right there. It just blows my mind. Another Publix. Trader Joe's, maybe? Another newcomer? Yeah, Trader Joe's is great. But anyway, they bypass us for the West Coast. Yeah, it's really, I just have to give some thought down there, guys.
Thank you, Ed. All right.
Just one quick comment. One reason why I agree with this development stuff for the trails and other things is I want our residents to be able to use it without getting out on a killer highway like Southern Boulevard. So I definitely disagree with the right turn only because I want our residents to be able to go to it and come back from it and stay in Loxahatchee where the roads are going to be speed hump and they're going to be slow. I don't believe the college kids and the people that work there after a full day's work are going to want to head north on B Road and run 15, 20 miles an hour when they're going to be anxious to get home. So I definitely disagree with right turns only.
I guess I would charge right now. I'll let Mr. Banks go.
Oh, no.
Unless you have any specific questions on, and I'll be happy to answer them, otherwise we turn it over to the college and let them do their part of the presentation. Happy to answer any more comments or questions you might have.
Any other questions by council members? Bob, I think you did looks very good. Thank you. Okay, moving to the college. Glad to see Dr. Galvin back there. And we've got quite a few distinguished guests with him as well, so welcome to our community. Hello.
Hello, good evening, Mayor Browning, council members. While we're getting the computers turned over, I would like to take this opportunity to do some introductions. First off, I'm Colleen Walter with Urban Design Soleil Studios, the planning consultant for Palm Beach State College. We are pleased to have this opportunity to come before you tonight to discuss the applications that the college has submitted and the development of their master site plan and the design guidelines. Here on behalf of the college is President Dr. Dennis Gallant and two members of the District Board of Trustees, Carolyn Williams and John Dowd. Also Dick Becker, who is the Vice President for Administration and Business Services, John Wetzakonis, who is the Director of District Facilities, Kirk Stetson, the Manager of Facilities Planning and Construction, and the consultant team, which includes Alan Gerwig from Alan Gerwig and Associates, and he has been very involved with Mr. Benz and with staff in regards to the B Road design and the meetings and the proposed improvements on the section of B Road from Southern to Okeechobee. Also involved in that was Adam Kerr, our transportation consultant from Kim & Horn, and Adam is also here this evening. Mary Lindgren from EW Consulting, our environmental consultant, and the firm of Ziskovich Architects, Bernard Ziskovich, Jose Murguia, and George Perez. Mr. Seymour has already introduced himself, and Josh Long from Gunston is also here this evening. Essentially, it's almost the same group that was here in November when we had a very good workshop at the town, and we appreciated your input at that time. And following up on that workshop and the applications that have been submitted, I'd like to go through a presentation with you as to where the status is for the college, their applications, and the development of their various documents. And I don't know, maybe if we could dim the lights just a little bit. At the joint workshop that the District Board of Trustees and the Town Council had in November, we had a very good presentation as to the vision of Palm Beach State College for this 75-acre portion of the Simon property. And coming out of that meeting, we got good input from both the council as well as from the public, and we also got direction on 5 key issues that the college needed your input on so that they knew whether or not they should move forward on this property. And that included support to locate the college on this piece of property, support to reinstate the RR5 land use designation, which is the former designation on the property and a designation that allows public schools as a use. The property has an AR zoning district, and the RR5 land use designation is consistent with that zoning district. The zoning district allows public schools as well. So with having the RR5 land use, the AR zoning, the site is essentially eligible to be considered for the college campus. Also, we discussed the elimination of Tangerine Drive through this portion of the Simon property. As Mr. Benz indicated in his presentation, Tangerine Drive will stop at the common access drive that will serve both the college and the commercial park. We also spoke about creating special policies that would be adopted into your comprehensive plan that would govern the development of this site. Because your Unified Land Development Code does not specifically speak to colleges, in working with town staff, incorporating special policies is a very appropriate way to address the future development on the parcel. We also discussed the treatment of the northern buffer and the proposal to have a 110-foot separation from the properties on the north side of Collecting Canal Road. And that included the 60-foot canal right-of-way and a minimum 50-foot buffer that would be proposed on the north side of the property. And coming out of that meeting, we had a general consensus from the council that these 5 items were acceptable, recognizing that the last 2 were items that would be continued to be discussed as the project moved through the process and that is actually the focus of our presentation this evening, is to look at the proposed special policies, as well as to walk you through the development of the master site plan and the design guidelines that would be referenced in these special policies. At that workshop meeting, we also heard from the public and from the council that there is definitely a desire for the plan of development for the college to be compatible and complementary to the community, and that the treatment of the northern buffer and the open space within the campus also had to be characteristic of the area. We also discussed the architectural design and that would be consistent with the character of the town. Although we cannot comply with the Rural Vista design guidelines for certain reasons, the development of the campus would be guided by those design guidelines. And essentially what has been proposed is that the college would actually create its own design guidelines that would govern development of the site. What we have done is put together text for 3 special policies that could be incorporated into your comprehensive plan under Objective 1.15. And what these policies would do is they would set forth the regulations that would guide the development on this piece of property for the college. One of the things that we spoke about in the workshop meeting was that your Unified Land Development Code does not specifically address colleges and universities. But the state laws and rules and codes do address colleges and universities, and in quite a lot of detail. These requirements that are included in the Florida Building Code, the Florida Fire Prevention Code, the state regulations for educational facilities, also called the SREP, are mandated by the state, and the college has to comply with these requirements. So what we are proposing in the first special policy is that it would set forth that development of the property would be governed by these regulations. The SREP, the Florida Building Code, and specifically in their section 423, which is specific to educational facilities. And actually in the new 2010 building code, there also is now section 443 that is specific for educational facilities, as well as the rest of the building code requirements. The Florida Fire Prevention Code would also apply, as would the requirements for the South Florida Water Management District and the Loxahatchee Grove Water Control District, which would govern the drainage requirements for the property. So these regulations, which are already codified elsewhere, would govern the development. And what we've done, as was requested at the workshop meeting, is there's a matrix that's been prepared that essentially compares the requirements in the Unified Land Development Code with those provisions in the state codes. And that was provided to staff and I believe provided to council in advance of this workshop meeting to essentially show you where in the state codes those regulations are, so that you know that there is guidance. For example, your town Unified Land Development Code does not specifically speak to parking requirements for colleges, but the SRF and I think section 423 do have specific parking requirements. And because those are mandated, the college has to comply with them. The second special policy that is proposed would require that a master site development plan be prepared and submitted to the town. Now, as we discussed last time, this is a long-term initiative for the college. It takes over 50 years essentially to develop a college campus. The youngest campus that Palm Beach State College has is 30 years, and that's the Boca campus. Palm Beach Gardens has been around for 45 years. Lake Worth has been around for 57 years. So needless to say, these campuses grow over time as programs are identified, as student enrollment increases, and most importantly, as funding is available. So at this point in time, it's very difficult to pinpoint for the entire property where buildings are going to be, where parking is going to be. But the college does have the opportunity to start to create a framework for the site that will identify where some of the major site improvements are, including the access points. As Mr. Benz indicated, there's already been coordination with DOT in regards to the access on Southern Boulevard. There's been coordination with the town in regards to the access on B Road. And those are elements that can be incorporated into the master site development plan. Additionally, the proposed intensity, the treatment of the northern buffer can also be incorporated into this plan, and it becomes the guide for future development of the site. One of the other components that is proposed in this special policy is that there would be a set of design guidelines that would be prepared, and that also would be incorporated into the master site development plan and approved by the town. And those design guidelines would require that development on the site be consistent with the character of the community. Now, the college has been working on the development of this master site development plan and the design guidelines, and Bernard Ziskovich is going to walk you through that after we get through with the special policy portion of this presentation. So you'll see what is being prepared and will be submitted to the town and moving forward with the master site development plan. The third special policy that is proposed is one that actually is referenced already in the SREP, but in working with staff, we felt that this was also important to include as a special policy. Pursuant to the state regulations, the college is required to complete an educational plant survey every 5 years, and that is for every campus. They have to look at their existing facilities, they have to look at the number of students, they have to look at what programs they anticipate building in the next 5 years. They have to look at opportunities for funding. And all of that gets analyzed, and then they are required to prepare a campus master plan. Now, their campus master plan is almost like a capital improvements plan. It essentially is a very large document. We hear master plan, we think it's a one-page 24 by 36 inch sheet, but in this case, it's actually a very detailed capital improvements plan that shows what they are proposing over the next 5 years to meet the identified needs that were identified as part of the survey. What this policy would require is that when they submit that document to the state, that it also gets submitted to the town, so that the town will know in advance what the college anticipates constructing in the next 5 years, so that you're aware of the programs, the proposed buildings, other proposed infrastructure improvements that would all be included as part of that campus master plan. And again, it's actually a requirement already in the SREP, but by incorporating it as a special policy in the comp plan, it assures that that document will be submitted to the town every 5 years for your information. With that, what I would like to do is to turn it over to Bernard Ziskovich to walk you through the master site development plan and the design guidelines.
Thank you. Good to see you again. My name is Bernard Ziskovich. This is my partner, Jose Maguido, who will be doing this part of the presentation. Are we comfortable with lights off, or would you rather have them on?
No lights off.
Okay. As you recall, we had a workshop in November, and we've taken the conversation and have moved on into the next stage. So what we heard loud and clear is that Loxahatchee is a very special place, and as Colleen mentioned, we're trying to address that particular issue from the standpoint of both the master plan and also the design guidelines. So the first issue is, as also mentioned, colleges have a way of beginning and then they grow organically. It depends a lot on what are the needs over time, what is the curriculum over time, and we thought that perhaps it would be very interesting to show you a brief plan of the Palm Beach Gardens campus, which you can see right in here is essentially surrounded by significant amount of green area and water retention areas, existing campus buildings and parking lots. This was not a master plan that was done initially to comply with anybody's regulations, because when this was done 45 years ago, the college had total control. The reason that we think it's important to show this is left without regulations, this tends to happen anyway. Because the college fundamentally wants to be a good neighbor. The college fundamentally wants to be able to deal with protecting the natural environment. As was stated earlier, the mission of the college is not the same as a commercial mission. It's one of public benefit and public interest. Their mission is to educate people and to put them into the workforce and into academia. And as a result, these things tend to happen whether you want to regulate them or not. The images are pastoral. Everyone's image of a campus, especially of this type, tends to want to be rural anyway. This is not an urban campus where it's mostly concrete and high-rise buildings. That's not who will ever be here. This is not what Waxahachie is, and that's not a possibility. So these are all Palm Beach Gardens campus. So as you begin to think about this particular site, let's begin by, in a way, deconstructing it. Instead of talking about the overall, let's begin by what is unique and authentic. And one of them is the wetlands. The marshes, the cypress, the activities that come along with that. So you can see those in the areas that are self-evident. And we definitely intend to work around them and to protect them and to make them an integral part of the overall campus. We also are proposing the red line, which is a 50-foot buffer. And again, in the spirit of deconstructing, don't take that line as its only line, because we're layering in a number of other locations where we can begin to make not necessarily an abrupt transition to the residential neighborhood, but one that is really what the word transition means, going from one use slowly into another use, and eventually across the buffer line. So with that in mind, what we're really looking at is the idea in the guidelines of a self-imposed restriction that for 250 feet, there would definitely not be any building that would be more than 2 stories high. So even though we can go higher by code, even though we can use our floor area, we're trying to look at a way to create not a geometric edge, but an organic edge. As I showed you in Palm Beach, that tends to happen anyway, but especially in Waxahachie, I don't think it would be something you would want or that we would want, which is basically a line drawn and then paving on the other side of that line. What we want is something that looks organic and natural, and that tends not to be straight lines. So as a result of that, we're also looking at the area that is required in order to protect those natural resources. So when you look at the wetland locations, we're not going to end up building in between and around and on top of them. So this is another layer that by its own geometry starts to create this squiggly line. As you begin to look at stormwater management over time, you end up with a significant amount of the 75 acres, which will be dedicated to water retention area, which by definition is open space. And we'll give you those totals in a moment. So when you begin to think about what is it in my life that is going to be my impact as a result of this college moving in over the near term, in 5 to 10 years, this shows you basically the area of impact. It's some water retention somewhere up in here, and possibly a building site somewhere in here. So as you move to phase 2, you begin to build more and more water retention. All of this area will be basically undeveloped for many, many years, because there's not going to be the need for the construction of the overall build-out when you think about how long it takes for one of these campuses to be built, which is why Colleen said if the youngest one is 30 years, you know, the oldest one is 55 years or somewhere thereabouts, I don't remember the exact number, and Palm Beach Gardens is now 45 years. So we're looking at a very long time, because as you know, this is not market-driven. The ability to get funding is a state appropriation, it's a line item in the budget, it has to be appropriated by the legislature. It's not exactly like, oh, suddenly everybody wants to be here and I'm going to be able to build all this stuff. It's not a private sector market-driven approach, it's a state mandated, legislated budgeting that enables them to build the building. And you will have a 5-year term in which to look at each successive master plan and see what's coming up. So this is a very, very slow growth type of process. Eventually, we'll have additional water management, which, if it turns out to be in this location, by the way, is immediately adjacent to the other one that was proposed on the commercial side. So this does become a path between possibly two lakes eventually, which could be really nice. And then to complete it, we would probably end up looking at water retention in the surrounding edges. So back to the original comment. This is really not, nor should you really want, a line in the sand with a hard edge. What we're really showing you is as you deconstruct the evolution of this property over many years, you're going to find that basically all of this remains intact for a very long time. And as this area ends up becoming a campus with buildings and students and parking and green spaces, etc., you're always going to have this surrounding edge because that's the natural place for us to put it. It makes no sense for us to put it in and around our own buildings and our own parking lots because the amount of buffer space you need in order to build that makes no sense. So that's why we began with this idea of consolidating the main campus more or less in this zone, which is why we have the 250-foot line of 2 stories where we will not commit to anything more than that, which basically could be maybe 1 building in this area. But the intensity of the campus by intention is going to be in the central zone. That's what we're trying to do. We want to have a more compact campus. That's a more environmentally friendly thing to do. We want the students to park their car once, not drive all over the place to go from building to building. So we're going to want to consolidate and compress the campus by definition. That's going to necessarily happen in the place where we have the most land area, and we intend to start here and work our way that way. So that's going to be basically the overall concept. So when you put the whole thing together, we have a line in the sand at 50 feet. We have another line at 250 feet from the property line, so that's an additional 200 feet. And then we have a completely surrounded by buffer campus zone, because we're really looking at 2 things. One is, you've told us that what you really want to accomplish is a campus that looks and feels and acts as if it's part of Loxahatchee Groves. And Jose's going to take you through the guidelines, which are voluntarily and specifically imposed on ourselves. Those buildings will be very Loxahatchee-ish, if I can coin a word. And we want people to be able to see that architecture, but it's going to be a passing view. The main event is we're going to set back from the neighbors. We're going to give everybody their space. There's no intention here for the college to be in your face in any way, but we do need some identification. We do need for people to recognize that it's the campus. We will need something out front that says it's the campus. And that is very modest, frankly, compared to most commercial developments. It'll be substantially less than that. So when you add it all up, you have stormwater management, that's 18 acres. You have wetlands, that's 2.5 acres. And then you have open space, which is not entirely defined because we don't know exactly where these edges will end up being. But it's more or less in the range of 10 to 15 acres by the time we're done. So you're looking at approximately, let's call it between 25 and 35 acres of open space, wetlands, water retention, etc. If you were to simply take your 300-foot line, draw a line in the sand, and leave the rest for the development, that line in the sand of buffer would represent 15 acres. So no matter what, we're still doubling the amount of buffer. It's just that we're doing it in a way that makes for a better campus, and frankly, we believe in a way that makes for a better design resolution for the neighborhood as well. So as we go forward, we can take pen to pencil and we can draw lines in various configurations, but in general, there are always going to be something along these lines, which is the central zone open for development. And by the way, when the college builds buildings, and you can see it at any campus, that means that when you are in an aerial in Google looking down, you're still going to see a lot of trees because there's landscaping between the buildings, there's landscaping in the parking lots, there's open spaces for the use of students. This is just the really big, undisturbed areas where nothing will happen because we need it either for the wetlands, for the open space, or for the water retention areas. So the phase one will be like this. So in the near future, you can imagine that you will see a project that will be more or less upfront with an entry point right in here, as Mr. Bentz described. We'll have another entry-exit point right in here. We'll carve that road through the green space, and we will have an interconnected campus that will look and feel and be like this for quite a long time, because we have room here for more than one building. And then as we progress, Jose will take you through the design guidelines so that you begin to see what those buildings' character will be like, so that we can basically show you that the guidelines are really very, very responsive to the rural Vista guidelines that he gave us in the first place. Jose? Thanks.
Glad to be back. What I'd like to share with you is how the guidelines take the Rural Vista guidelines and bring them into an institutional use. And we basically try to do it in two different ways. We have site planning guidelines and architectural guidelines. And I'll first take you through the site planning guidelines and share with you how they're going to work. The idea is to capture the natural setting, the resources that are currently on the site. And there's basically SP1, which are basically four different categories. The first is building orientation. The idea to develop the campus is around clustering buildings, as Bernard mentioned, providing a concentration building in the center of the campus. That allows us to maintain and retain the natural vegetation around the edges as was depicted. The campus itself will be arranged with a series of open spaces and quads, as you see in some of the images here, that will provide gathering spaces and further open spaces between the buildings. In addition to that, as was pointed out, the buildings will be set back specifically in the 200-foot area from the buffer, where there will only be two-story buildings. And finally, as the buildings themselves approach the property line, the idea is to cascade them down. And so the highest development would be at the center of the campus. SP2 are the landscaping and open space requirements, and what's guiding the thinking here is the preservation of the natural resources, the wetlands, as we pointed out. The idea that the campus has a history of maintaining the specimen vegetation on the site. They have, as was shown in the Palm Beach Gardens campus, many of the specimen oaks have been kept, and the buildings have been sensitive in their placement to preserve those natural features, and that's what's going to guide the development of this campus as well. And as well as providing open space for active use as well. So we intend to have fields as depicted in this area, as well as passive areas around the perimeter. The campus development, roads and driveways will be asphalt paved with accents of pavers, brick pavers, perhaps turf block, to minimize the amount of heat sink and implement sustainable practices in the development of the water management. The architectural guidelines will bring the Rural Vista guidelines to the institutional use, and we intend to follow the same principles of having AD guidelines. The first one is AD1, which is recognizing that institutional use of the buildings tend to be a little larger, and what we are going to be doing is breaking the scale of the building down, as shown here. This is Pine Jog, a campus that we did in the area, and again, the successful use of large buildings working around existing trees, breaking the scale of the buildings down, cascading down, and being able to maintain the landscaping that we find in the area. We also will use accents of stone, brick to complement the stucco buildings that the college will be providing. They will also implement roofs as well, sloping roofs, where possible to again bring the scale down of the facilities. So the guidelines integrate that into the building development. In addition to that, there is going to be a strong awareness of sustainability and providing screens as well as shading devices for the windows and porches around the building. And as Bernard mentioned, building identification will be important. The idea is to scale and place the building identification consistent with the character of the town. And for example, the standards sign that the colleges used will be pedestal low sign as depicted in 84. So in general, that's how we're going to bring the guidelines to the campus development, and I'll pass it on to Bernard at this point to close for us.
Essentially what we're saying is that we believe that the campus will be a benefit to the community will be a benefit to the campus. We want to be good neighbors. The college has always acted in that way before. So we want to support the local community with lifelong learning, which as all of us are aging and we may have one or more careers, that's something that's actually truly a resource because you can really enhance your own personal life through education, and the college believes in that. We have a way that we believe that we're reinforcing the character of the community in terms of architecture and design. I think that from the standpoint of the community, to have an institution of this type within your town is going to be a real asset. I think that it's something to be proud of, especially in conjunction with the chosen character that has been the kind of mainstay of the town. It's going to be a real example of how you can have a college in a rural atmosphere that's going to be progressive in education and be able to act at a very high level. I think that's a very positive thing for the image of the town. There will be some economic development that comes from the community. Some of it will be right next door, some of it will be in other places, but we'll have faculty, we'll have students, it will increase business, and I think that the economics is not the main objective, but it'll be a side benefit. I think that one of the things that most people look for is commitment. And commitment is related to the longevity and duration of a good partner. And I think that it's probably in everyone's belief system, it's nothing new that a college of this type is a great partner. They're there for the long term, and they're always mostly interested in improving the quality of life that is part of the campus life, because after all, that's how they attract their students, and that's how they service the students. So I think that all of the mission elements of the college are consistent with the mission elements of the town. We've listened to all the good commentary. We've had a number of meetings with your great staff, and we believe that it's really going to be an asset. And with that, I'd like to ask Brian Seymour to come up and talk about some of the other issues that are part of this proposal.
Again, Brian Seymour, Councilor, thank you everybody for your time. I think that I don't need to say too much. We really, that's what you're right about. When we went through your comprehensive plan and we went through your code, we went through your guidelines, clearly nobody contemplated even 2 years ago the idea of a college campus in the town of Waxahachie Groves. But what you've got here is an opportunity where, and the way I guess I can say this is the Palm Beach State College, which used to be Palm Beach Community College, is taking community out of its name. It's not taking community out of its style. That's what it's about. And what we've done, as you can see, is really try to incorporate what we could. There are some strictures about what we cannot do. The state says we have to do certain things. We can't use certain materials. But what we've done is try to incorporate the best we can for this long-term development to look at what you all have. And as you look through the guidelines, and I expect after tonight we're going to make some changes to beef them up, maybe clarify a few things based on what we hear tonight, maybe make a little bit of change to the master plan. so that when it comes back to planning and zoning and to ultimately you all sitting as a decision-making body, which you're not tonight, so unfortunately we can't get all those approvals right away, that would be nice though, that you'll be able to see all this. But what we do want to do is hear back from you, and if you've got any concerns or things you like that we can try to enhance and make sure that we've clarified for you. Again, looking at this in a really 50 to 70 year time frame. The first phase being about 10 to 12, maybe 15 even years over the course of time, and then going forward from there. Love to hear what you have to say so we can make this the most beneficial for not just the college, but the community as a whole.
Thank you. Okay, any questions about that?
I'd like to begin, not so much directly with what you said, but what was said before about the buffer. I think it's a false choice to anybody to think that we ever said that we wanted a line and this was the buffer and that there was to be no other preservation or any other things going on. The buffer was to be in addition to everything else that was required by the ULDCs. So to say that you have more acreage now than the 15 acres it's just disingenuous and not really apples to apples. Once again, I don't understand, but I'm a simple guy, why the little piece has to go up north to be within 50 feet of the north end. Why do you all have that on that one map? You have to have that piece come up there and thus take away the idea of having a buffer without any buildings in it. I can see that for the most of the park, it doesn't have any buildings, and where you drew your lakes, you're doing what I talked about before, but I don't understand why that little section goes up there and you want to build any buildings within that north 300 feet. Some other things that I noticed going through the matrix, which I appreciate very much, is I see that there's athletic fields. I see that these athletic fields are equipped with lights, and that these lights are in excess of 20 feet, which was the maximum height that we have. I see that that's the case with all the lighting throughout the campus, that it exceeds our lighting standards. I also see and heard about the cascading buildings, and I'm thinking the Hanging Gardens of Babylon here, of the 75-foot tall 5-story buildings that you suggest you're going to build. And I'd always thought that Waxahachie Groves wasn't any taller than 3 stories, but apparently when college comes, we just do different than we had thought. Further, I don't see how you fit with the community when it's an extremely equestrian community and you ban horses from your campus. So I don't really see how you're going to work with us on that. These matrix explain right here, I guess, how you do not comply with the Rural Vista guidelines rather than how you do. At least from my looking at it, basically it says you're going to do something different on almost every line. As far as transportation issues, I see you talk about Palmtran, and I'm concerned as to what Palmtran lines run to the acreage, which is the greatest concern of the people in town, and we're going to have people coming through the acreage, and I wonder how Palmtran is going to in any way alleviate that, but more likely to bring additional traffic from the coast and from west rather than from north or south. Also, as the final thing, I note that according to our guidelines, there's to be no alcohol sales within 750 feet of educational institutions. And I'm assuming that there'll be some alcohol sales at the corner there. I think that's inherent in what they expect to do. And I also feel that over and above the presentation that y'all have given, I have heard other people in town, especially adjoining landowners, feel that they will probably be taking advantage of the college's expansion north to be asking for convenience stores and other community serving needs like beer and wine sales for the college kids and sandwich shop. These were things that I've heard mentioned just around town of people saying what they expected to do with their property. So I think that those are concerns that I have. I'd certainly love to hear you say you're gonna work with me on the buffer, but a lot of these other things I think are fairly problematic, and once again, as I said, illustrate how you're not cooperating with the town rather than how you are. So with that, I'll go to the next.
Okay, any council members?
I think, well, one thing that, you know, we all have to remember, and you guys have stressed that, is that, you know, the build out for this site is gonna be well in excess of 50 years. And, the first phase is gonna be along Southern Boulevard. And, you know, essentially for the, let's say, easily for the first 15 years, we're gonna have a buffer well over half the property. You know, and meanwhile, we still need to talk about, you know, what that final buffer is going to be, but I think we have time on our side in regards to that. You know, we can still discuss that, but, you know, we have to remember the first phase of the build of the college is going to be along Southern, so we're going to have easily 700, 800 feet of buffer temporarily at least, and meanwhile, we can still talk about it. So.
Council members?
I think I'd be correct in saying we can't really talk about it because we're going to approve a master site plan, and then they're going to say how they're going to change that over the course of 75 years. So really, it is something that we need to talk about now, so at least we can get down. I'm not saying at this very moment, because obviously we have additional processes to go through, but I think it's something that we'd like to have agreed to before we vote on the land use change.
I think one of the things that I look at is the size of the site. We don't have very many sites in Loxahatchee Grove this size, so you know, our hospital is obviously larger than 3 stories. You know, and so something like that on a 75-acre parcel that's trees and everything else, I doubt if anybody in Loxahatchee Grove could see it, you know, from their homes or anything else. So I think there's an advantage there. It's also along Southern Boulevard. And our intent has always been, going back to the neighborhood plan, was to put the more intensive stuff on Southern Boulevard. So, you know, I like the pictures. You know, I hope that ours, I mean, I don't know that I'm as pessimistic as some are, and, you know, but I know this is a long-term project, and I know that the State College wants something that will look very attractive. And at the same time, I know they're locked in with certain state regulations as far as buildings. So we're in kind of a unique situation here that we're treating this. This doesn't mean that every piece of property on this road we're going to give the same leeway. And, you know, because I think this is a special thing. We admit, I believe the college will be a great neighbor to our town. And so I hope we can work together. At the same time, I like all your pictures. There were a couple of those that looked really nice because, like Tom says, there wasn't that little jog up in there. Everybody looks at that little jog and says, "What's that?" So you know, with the lakes and the wetlands and everything else. So you know, hopefully we can work together and this thing will work well. So anyway, okay, I've got Dennis Flip.
Dennis Lipp, North Road. Welcome Dr. Gallen to our Council Chambers Water Control Board. I've been talking with the doctor for a very long time under Justice State about this location. And it's very good to see this finally coming together. One thing that I would like to see is maybe we can work with the state, maybe we can do what we need to do on the legislative level to allow hardy plank as a siding material that can be put up on the inside. When I heard the word stucco, my brain went fuzzy. And it's not time yet to go fuzzy, but anyway. So I would like to find out a way, how we would do that, with the state, to get you to be able to use hardy plank to some degree, even if it's just a slight metal pitch on a roof so it looks metal but flat on top. So we still try to keep that rural Vista ideas going. So look forward to the process.
Thank you, Dennis. Grace Joyce.
For the record, Grace Joyce. As a planner, having an applicant come forward like the State College is like a dream, you know. Looking at the two projects, the befores and the afters, I would have to say that what Palm Beach State College is proposing is a lot more of what Loxahatchee Groves wants, as opposed to just clear cutting a site, putting an asphalt parking lot and 100,000 square foot of retail space. They've actually gone out and surveyed the land. They've identified the wetlands. They're going to keep them. They're going to build the college around what's naturally there, and we have to give them credit for that. Again, it's a 50, 60-year process. Who's to say what's going to happen to the town between now and then? But I do think it's important that we protect ourselves. 300-foot buffer, I think, is a little much. You know, again, if most of the development is going to take place in the center, I think that's exactly what the town needs. I also think we need to look at this as Palm Beach State College is going to be a partner for this community for a very long time. Having them here will give us access to grants that we may not have been able to get before. There are certain requirements that the state has. Do you have a grocery store in your community? Well, now we can say, yes, we do. Do you have a school, a college? Now we can say yes. And you move up on the priority list or get a higher rating because you have those things within your community. I like where they're going. As a resident, I would definitely support this. I do support the application. And I think we need to step out of the MLU box, because with the MLU, you have to do residential. College is not doing residential, so they have to change back to what it is that we want this town to be, which is, you know, RR5. So I applaud everyone on the staff who put this together. And as a citizen of this community for 22 years, I want to say thank you.
Thank you, Chris. All right. If no other public comments on this, moving to your next topic. Is that it?
We got nothing else? I'm just collecting paper. I went electronic because I was being sustainable, but.
We weren't invited. Okay, any other public comment? Good job, Mayor. All right, wrap it up.
Don't rush the